It's the middle of summer in America's first national park, and it's as active as ever. The Bison Rut is on, the wolves are out with their pups, geysers are erupting, and I'm here to see it all, including a run-in with two of this place's most famous predators. It's summertime here in Yellowstone National Park. Hayden Valley. Found on the eastern side of Yellowstone's Grand Loop Road, not only is it expansive and beautiful, but is teeming with wildlife too. Rolling in toward the evening, I posted up at Lamar Creek here in the valley, hoping to catch a glimpse of the Wapiti Lake Wolfpack, whose den was just over the ridge. No sign of them tonight, but I did receive word that there was a bison carcass just down the road lying in the river. Carcass equals predators vying for an easy meal, so I popped down there quickly to take a look. Yep, that's definitely a dead bison. The rut was just starting here in Yellowstone, the rut occurring every August, when bison bulls become extra active and competitive with one another over breeding rights. Feats of strength include grunting, rolling in the dirt, and of course, fighting. Fights aren't always lethal, but clearly this one was, and fairly recent too. This guy was still pretty fresh and undiscovered, with nothing coming by tonight. No matter, I'd be back in the morning. I got the van parked up in the canyon campground and turned in for the evening. Tomorrow I'd be back in Hayden Valley looking for wildlife, and then exploring the trails around the famous Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. Well, something had moved it a bit, but nothing had actually started eating our deceased friend here. So after hanging around for an hour, I made my way back up to Lamar Creek to see if those wolves were out. Nothing here except quite a few bison. These guys are everywhere in Yellowstone, especially Hayden and Lamar Valleys. Who was I to pass up the opportunity to get some golden hour bison shots? This bull was very vocal, bellowing at every passing car, and then some. It's important to remember to give these guys space, and especially during the rut. 25 yards to be exact, or from the safety of a properly parked vehicle, that is, in a pull-off or a parking lot. I hung out with my grunting friends here for a little longer before they made their way across the road and into the meadow. It was getting close to noon, which meant wildlife was bedding down until dusk, so I was off to explore the canyon. It's a common misconception that this park gets its name from this very canyon, the appropriately named Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, and it's easy to see why. Rhyolite lava that's turned into wonderful golden and pink hues make up this canyon, which the Yellowstone River flows through, and includes one of this park's most iconic locales, Artist Point. So I was taking the afternoon to hike the rim trails, exploring the Upper Yellowstone Falls, the Lower Yellowstone Falls, and of course, the aforementioned Artist Point. The rim trail provides spectacular views of both, ending at Artist Point. The parking lot down here was closed this particular day, meaning access was hike-in only, making for a less crowded than usual visit. The lighting was okay, I suppose, around midday, but I decided I'd come back for sunrise here tomorrow. And wouldn't you know, the parking lot had reopened and it was getting busy. So I headed up toward the falls for a closer look at each. First up was the short hike to the brink of the Upper Falls. Falling 109 feet into the Yellowstone River below, water is carried downstream and over what is arguably the more popular of the two waterfalls found here, the Lower Yellowstone Falls. Tumbling 308 feet into the heart of the canyon, you cannot beat the view from the brink of these falls. A spectacular rainbow to match, made for some incredible scenery. I also know I'm going kind of quick, so if you want a more detailed video to Yellowstone, I'll link my full guide to the park here and in the description. Once it's done, that is. Wrapping up here, I got checked into my next campsite in Canyon Village. These were all last-minute reservations, meaning I was hopping around from campsite to campsite. A quick dinner and a well-deserved beverage, and it was time to head back out to that carcass. Surely something was on it by now. And surely not. Well, that's not completely true. Eventually, a lone coyote made its way out near our bison friend, but made no real effort to actually get to it. The whole thing was still intact, too. Was anything ever going to find it? Spoiler, of course. But nature wasn't making it easy on me. Up early for a wonderful sunrise at Artist Point. I just loved the contrast of these deep shadows with golden hour sunlight on the falls and the rest of the canyon. But back to the carcass. And once again, nothing. Alright, at this point, frustrated, I packed up early and started making my way to Madison Campground, where I'd be exploring the Norris Geyser Basin and catching sunset at Old Faithful in the Upper Geyser Basin. For as many times as I'd visited Yellowstone, I had never explored Norris, and today that was going to change. Home to a number of bubbling and colorful pools, and less predictable geysers, Norris is an ever-changing geothermal landscape. It's just under 3 miles of hiking round trip to see the entire thing from the boardwalk trails, and it's well worth it. Of course, the premier attraction here is probably Steamboat Geyser, the largest active geyser in the world. There's no predicting this one. It spans anywhere from a few days between eruptions to decades. A little more than halfway through the year at the time of publishing this video, it's gone off twice now. After Norris, I headed down to Old Faithful in the Upper Geyser Basin. Timing was close enough to right to catch a sunset eruption of Yellowstone's most famous and predictable geyser, going off roughly every 90 minutes. So, I took the extra time to walk the boardwalks, catching an eruption from Daisy Geyser here, Sawmill Geyser, and an Old Faithful eruption from a distance. Not the one I was waiting for, though. I explored the iconic Old Faithful Inn and its wonderful wooden interior, before setting up outside for the final daylight show of Old Faithful. It may for some people, but watching this thing go off never grows old for me. Tomorrow I'd be sleeping in a bit, before heading to Lamar Valley and Slough Creek, a more remote part of the park, but one teeming with all kinds of wildlife. A steamy morning at Midway Geyser Basin in the Grand Prismatic Spring meant I wasn't seeing too many of its colors this time. But no matter. I was off to Lamar Valley for the day. Located in the northern part of Yellowstone, Lamar Valley is vast, breathtaking, and one of the finest areas in the park to spot wildlife, especially wolves. The rule of thumb when searching for wildlife is to do so closer to sunrise and sunset, when temperatures are cooler. That doesn't mean you don't have a chance to spot anything midday, but your odds are certainly better the closer to dark it is. Making my way down around Mount Washburn, I stopped to admire the views for a bit. Yellowstone is simply breathtaking, and today it looked extra picturesque. Rolling into Lamar Valley, one of my first wildlife sightings would be this osprey, with a large nest just off the road, and with the river just below, it was hopefully easy fishing. If you thought Hayden Valley had a lot of bison, just wait until you see Lamar Valley. They're everywhere here. Pushing back into the valley proper past Slough Creek, and you'll see them all over. In the distance, and even up in the road. Definitely expect to get caught in a bison jam or maybe two while down here. I found a good pull-off with some of our furry friends a reasonable distance from the road and posted up. With buffalo aplenty and a brief rainstorm moving in, it made for a great picture. I watched these two, a Mr. and a Mrs., for a while as they posed. The Mr. not being too happy having his picture taken, or having other bison walk by. It's good to be aware of your surroundings in these situations. I heard commotion behind me and found 3 bison coming right up on my van. A good opportunity to get back in and put those back bunk windows to good use for some close-ups as they strolled on by. I continued filming them for a bit when I saw some commotion further out in the valley. These 2 bulls were running at full speed when suddenly one stopped and braced itself. It was a fight. These 2 smashed skulls together and tussled briefly before going their separate ways. I stayed just a bit longer, and of course ended up in a bison jam. Once that cleared though, I was heading back to Slough Creek. Maybe the best place for wolf spotting down here near Lamar Valley. I had a spot at the campground just down the road, so thankfully I didn't have to go too far. I posted up on the hill looking out toward the west, and waited. And waited. That's wildlife spotting. Wolves, no less. While you might luck into the right place at the right time, if you really want to see the good stuff, you need to have patience. And after about an hour, that patience paid off. Way out in the distance, some black figures emerged. It was the wolves. Some pups, I believe, eventually joined by an adult gray. They were pretty far out there, so binoculars or a spotting scope are a must. This footage is from my 900mm equivalent lens, and I punched in an additional 5 times when editing this. I, with a crowd of others, watched them play and run around the valley for a bit. Eventually, they bedded down again for the evening, and that was my cue to head toward camp. Tomorrow, I'd be back up here for sunrise for another look, and head back into the heart of Lamar Valley to see what else I might find. Except, waking up at 4 a.m. the next morning, I stumbled upon some interesting information. A grizzly and some wolves from the Wapiti pack had finally found that carcass and were on it last night. So I pivoted, said goodbye to Lamar Valley, and headed back to Hayden, arriving just before sunrise. And here is what I found from the safety of the ridge. This is Grizzly 791, one of the larger bears found in Yellowstone. Here in the early morning mist, he was happily enjoying some bison breakfast, while literally perched on top of the thing. Fair warning now, if you don't want to see chunks of bison getting ripped off of this carcass, it's probably time to tune out. He was going to town, and who wouldn't on a free meal? I stayed watching him for close to 15 minutes, when something moved off to his right. A true gray wolf if there ever was one, and yes, like I mentioned, from the Wapiti Lake pack. They made their way over the ridge and to the edge here, but not too close. Getting between a grizzly and his meal would be no easy feat, and this wolf was smart enough to wait its turn, for now at least. Grizzly 791 seemed fairly uninterested in the wolf's presence, and instead just kept on eating. A little pawing around, and then it moved in closer and gave me what is probably my shot of this trip. 2 of Yellowstone's premier predators, perfectly posed in one photograph. How about that? Finally, our wolf friend got tired of waiting and began to move on back toward the road, revealing yet another surprise. There were actually 2 of them. They made their way over, stopping at one point where I grabbed this photo. But finally, they made their way onto the road. Dogs will be dogs, I suppose, and these orange traffic cones were the perfect toys. And enough was enough, though. The Wapiti Lake pack is a little too habituated to humans, and not scared of traffic either, so the rangers decided it was time for some hazing, firing off a few rounds of maybe paintballs or rubber bullets at the wolves to drive them away. And Grizzly 791 too. At least for now. Eventually, he came back, and with the sun now up, enjoyed a little more bison. What a fitting end to this Yellowstone trip. I swear, I always get my best stuff on the last day. Here's a little bonus blurry footage from my way out. Turns out those wolves came back, and I got stopped to let them cross right in front of my van. Still, what an end to this one. And of course, someday soon, I'll be back in Yellowstone again. Until the next time.